is no way Baiju's a bottom. You're fucking delusional. He's feminine, so he must be a bottom. SMH my head. Baiju is 100% a top. He's not even feminine. He's like elegant. And people very often interpret that as opposite to masculine. I can't believe we have top bottom discussions here. Listen, it doesn't happen often, okay? This is a rare event. Baiju is like Jinchi? No, not at all. They could not be more different. They're very, very different. If anything, Baiju's a lot more like Mao Mao than Jinchi. Like, I mean, Baiju is Mao Mao, true. I thought you meant Jinchi from Wuwa, yeah, no. Anyways. Let's keep going.
This is not a power rankings tier list. This is simply a value tier list. Wriothesley would be a higher value if Ayaka and Skirk didn't exist. But the fact that they do means that he has very, very low value because he's so much worse than they are. Next is the no value, but you can use them category. And I actually struggle to say this because we've got Archons in these categories. You know, Zhongli, Venti, and now Raiden and Nahida. I'm saying that they have no value. What do you mean by that, Jello? Now, if you already have these characters, they have some value. This is not no value if you have them. Like, if you have them, you can't use them. I'm talking about an account that doesn't have these characters, that sees Nahida coming up on a rerun, and they say, oh, people say Nahida's pretty good. I should get her. No, Nahida has 0 pull value right now because she's essentially replaced on all of her teams by Lauma. Nahida does not make Lauma teams better. She actively just is redundant on Lauma teams, except maybe, arguably, Nilou Bloom, but even then, that is super debatable, and it certainly won't be the case when Nefer comes out, most likely, and Nilou Bloom likely won't be Lauma's best team.
Hot take! Lauma will not be played with Nilo. Listen, I don't think she will. I don't think she will. Sorry, I meant Nefer. I meant Nefer, not Lauma. Sorry. You know what I meant. You know what I meant. You know what I meant. No, we didn't. Okay, sorry. I guess you didn't. I get like I thought you guys would have realized that I misspoke from the context, but now that I think about it, the context wasn't like specific enough for you guys to realize that. So sorry. I apologize. Years of hearing crazy Zadev hot takes, we just believed it? Alright, buddy, calm down. I'm so lost with Llama teams, how does she not need Nahida while also replacing her? Well, does Arlecchino need Hu Tao on her teams? No. Does Lolly need Rosario on her teams? No. When a character replaces another one in their teams, they don't need the previous one. If Never was played with Nilo, Nilo would have a normal banner like Shenhe during Skirk's patch, not a chronicled one. Maybe. Maybe not. Shenhe didn't get a chronicled banner because she had already been on a chronicled banner last year. I'm actually confused because I don't have Nahida and I don't know if I should pull for her or Lama. Between the two, it's definitely Lama, I would say. Anyways, in here, I don't know if I fully agree with all of these. I think that there are still teams where Kazuha is best in slot, although they're getting rarer and rarer. Um, and maybe I should be put to death for this take, but I feel like Raiden is just better than this because of Loma. Like, Loma's release is gonna bring Hyperbloom back to being top 3 teams, and the best version of Hyperbloom is gonna be with Raiden. So like, so like, you know, listen, listen. Oh man. Is Kuki that much worse? Yes and no. The biggest problem with Kuki is not that it's worse when both teams are played optimally. Like, it is worse when both teams are played optimally. And it's a pretty noticeable difference. But like, no one plays Hyperbloom optimally. And so the question is, what sort of gameplay issues present themselves with each of the characters? And Kuki's uptime problems are just way bigger of a deal than any issue Raiden has.
So pulling for Nahida is always bad. That's not to say that you can't have a use for her when you have her. Using her for burning stuff in some of the Stygian Onslaught has been good. Using her for the Tulpa has been good. She has some value. So if I were making a power rankings tier list...
What if Inefa was built with full EM? The problem with Inefa is that she only hits every 2 seconds, so she's capped on Hyperbloom damage at 1 Hyperbloom per second. A leaker gameplay Raiden Hyperbloom team generally gets about 1.5 Hyperbloom per second. And leakers suck at the game. An optimized can probably get like 1.7, 1.8 Hyperblooms per second. Also, getting Ascendant Gleam is an actual downside in these teams. Because you lose a crit rate on your Hyperblooms. I don't know if I still have the sheet open. I had some Hyperbloom stuff with both Raiden and Inefa. This is kind of sus, though. Things changed a little bit. And I haven't updated this properly either. Uh, motion value. Yeah, this was pre-nerf Llama. And Hyperloom with Raiden was already better. But because the Inefa version capitalizes less on Hyperbloom damage and more on Llama personal damage, it got hit way more by the nerf.
list, which I'm working on a brand new version, by the way, Nahida would be significantly higher than this. However, as a pull value for an account to spend an entire 5 stars worth of wishes on Nahida, you're just better off getting Lauma, and then you don't need Nahida. Raiden, same sort of thing. Veresa and Clorand exist, especially Veresa, Flynn's as well, Ayaka, Jihad.
Yeah, like the thing with Raiden is like in her actual carry teams, she is not worthwhile. If anything, I think putting her in this category is actual cope as fuck, and she should be in this one, right? But Raiden is the best trigger for Hyperbloom. And Hyperbloom is one of the best teams in the game. It's just that it feels wrong to play Raiden in Hyperbloom. So people don't want to think about it. They don't want to talk about it. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Okay? Like Hyperbloom Raiden is the evil in see no evil, okay? You just have to shut up. We don't talk about it. But like you can't. Like it What's up, Bite? Hyperbloom Raiden is peak. Yes. You can't play Agave with Llama, so Nahida's still good there in there. Yeah, but most Agave teams that are good right now are not actually Aggravate, they're Quick Bloom teams, and in Quick Bloom, Llama's better. And then for spread teams, Llama's also better because of the shred. Like, you need to realize, okay? Llama's so good that she's actually an upgrade to Kenichi's teams. Kenich. Really? Okay, it's not actually like a strict upgrade, but it's a new alternative, basically. Kenichi's teams go from having 5 characters you can use on them to 6 characters. Alright, instead of pick 3 between Yansan, Maoika, Benedemili, it's now pick 3 between Yansan, Maoika, Benedemili, Llama. Is she on TDDS? Yeah. Anyways. Versus C0 versus Kenich C1 versus Molani C1. Are you asking what's stronger? It's like Hydrogen Bomb versus Coughing Baby versus Atomic Bomb. It's C1 Milani, yeah. The only thing is, Milani is difficult to play well, and Verissa is so fucking easy that, like, if it was Brave Skirkinara playing, having seen her Milani gameplay, Verissa, 100%, not even close. But on optimal teams, it would be Milani. Catching strays, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Poor girl became the face of being ass at Genshin. Yeah. GG. Brave Skirkinara would use Verissa normal attacks instead of plunges. Even if you do that, when you use Verissa's skill, it turns your normal attack into the charge attack that turns your normal attack into a plunge attack. Verissa has a lot of anti-stupid in her kit. Skirkinara is how I imagine every casual player playing Milani now. Aware. Have you seen the double Milani hit tech with Holy Escafie? I have. It's kind of sus. It's hard to make work reliably, and even if you can make it work reliably, it's hard to make it so that both hits vape. It's a showcase tech, not an actual gameplay tech. That's how you should think about it. Because you need to realize you are losing one character slot in order to put Escafie in there. So she needs to be doing her job well for it to work. And a lot of the time she doesn't. Anyways.
You can use her. She is strong, but she has no value because Skirk is so much better. Again, not saying that you can't use Ayaka, not saying that she's trash. She's actually...
Milani cons good. I already have her at C0. Yeah, Milani's cons are good. Don't spend money on this shit game, though.
One of the solid DPSs right now. She just has no pull value because Skirk exists.
Also, if you don't have fun with Milani at C0, you won't have fun with Milani at C1 either. So do keep that in mind. How much DPS does your best Verissa team have? That's a good question. I think my best Verissa team is probably the version with Bennett. Because my Verissa build is literally top 1 NA. So capitalizing as much as possible on buffs is probably better than getting the damage from Maoika.
You're saying, Jello, you're being a killjoy. I'm not telling you not to get Ayaka. I'm telling you, if you get Ayaka, I want you to know that you're choosing to grief your account by not getting Skirk. And honestly, base. I respect that and I encourage that. I just want you to know. Shen Yun, she's basically just right now on all the good teams, she's basically just always worse than Shen Yun. You can kind of, and Suk.
If that's how you define this tier, if you put Ayaka here, Cloud9 needs to be here too. That's all I'm saying. Caught?
Gross and different things, you can kind of get away with her when you get her C2, right? But we're not talking about C2. We're really trying to stick to the most free-to-play friendly stuff, which is C0, C0R1, maybe C1, Shenyun, C2, way too expensive. Chiori, same sort of thing. Most Chiori owners have constellations on Chiori, but if you're just considering getting Chiori, no value. Linny, you know, he's not unusable, but he has no value. Same with Hu Tao. She has some usable teams. All of these characters, they're all usable. Same with Kazuha. Next is Danger. They have some value, okay? Some value, but they are in the danger zone because they're barely holding on by a thread. Shenhe has some value on Skirk teams as the best in slot for a good number of bosses that you might use her on. Not all of them, because often Siglali has been better against Turtle, Papilla, sometimes even then Shenhe isn't being used, but in like against the Automaton, And in a bunch of cases, Shenhe has some value, but it's big danger because she's very, very liable to being power crept. Same with Navia. She is currently the best Geo DPS we have, so she has some value for content that requires Geo checks, which does exist and could exist more in the future.
I don't like this point of view. I understand why he's saying that, but the thing is, they will not give us geocheck content unless they give us a new Geo DPS. Like 100%. The only reason for them to introduce a geocheck boss in Siege and Onslaught is because they're running a new Geo DPS. So the idea that Navia gets value from being the strongest Geo DPS, to me, is a little bit cope.
But I expect that when we get like heavily focused Geo content, there's going to be a new Geo DPS that takes her out to the farm. So yeah, Navia is in danger. Emily is in danger of value because yeah, she's
okay. At least he addresses that. That's fine.
Best in slot on Kenichi, and she has some value in other places, but she's kind of outclassed by Kenichi's cons basically. So really don't recommend getting Emily in terms of value. She does have some value though, because although she's outclassed in terms of compared to Kenichi's cons, she is a team slot for him, which allows you to free up your Eonsan for another team, which is very good in the 3-team meta of the Siege and Onslaught, where a lot of people struggle to have enough supports. So she is good in that sense. But you know, even Kenichi, I mean,
Llama does the same thing, but she's better for your account overall. True!
Put in the caution category, which is next. I really wanted to put Flynn's here because I know people are really hyped for Flynn's, and I just wanted you to know that he is good with Anefa, but he's not insane with Anefa, and he is pretty terrible without Anefa. At least that's what it's looking like in the beta right now. So if you're considering...
I mean, okay. If we're being completely and fully honest with ourselves here, alright, we're gonna go to GC Sim, okay? We're gonna look at Chlorinde, and we're gonna filter out Maoika teams. Okay? We're gonna skip fake as fuck teams like this one. That's kinda cope. I mean, that one's definitely fun. Let's say Chlorinde, like, optimal gameplay, perfectly optimized bullshit, caps out a bitch high of 90k, like 87k. Sure. Is this true? How much did I have the C0 one at? 82. I think something is slightly wrong. My set's probably wrong. No, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Flynn's 90k. Flynn's without Anefa is better than even perfectly GC Sim optimized Chlorinde without Maoika. And if you look at with Maoika versus with Anefa, the gap is even bigger. They are in the same category, so just him being better there doesn't necessarily mean he shouldn't be in this category, but I don't know, man. To me, it's like... You're also kind of overlooking all the gameplay upsides that Flynn's has over a lot of other carries. How much optimization is there to make the client with aggravate? I think pretty much every GCC sim, every GC sim Chlorine team that uses Kirara is optimized to an extent that is not reasonable. And generally the first few of each iteration also are. Like a 25-second 2-skill Chlorine rotation is so fucking optimistic. Like, it's so fucking optimistic, man. Alright, this is slightly more realistic, probably. At 82k. How is Kirara better than Nahida? Because Nahida is not that good, and Calamity of Eshu is really good. Nahida will be better if you have Clement Sig, though. But the gap between Eshu and Finale is enough to make up for the gap between Nahida and Kirara. Anyways.
Considering getting Flins, you do not have an FA. Not telling you not to get Flins. I know everyone's excited for him, and you can go ahead and get him, and hopefully he gets buffed by Columbina, and you can get an FA on the rerun, or maybe not, or you get his C1, which is one of the most cracked C1s in the game currently, as long as they don't change it, and then that almost makes up.
But yeah, also, and I guess, honestly, more importantly, when you look at the other carries here, right, you have Client, you have Chaska, Kinich, right? Client's teams where you're not using the other really fucking strong units that all the carries want are pretty ass. Right? One of Flynn's biggest advantages is that the characters he uses aren't necessarily going to be required on your other teams. And in 3-team content like Siege and Onslaught, that matters so much. It matters so much. Isn't that true for Chaska? I think people overestimate Chaska's flexibility. Sure, she has a few different archetypes she can do, but there's not that many units that are very good that you want to use in Chaska teams. Right, like if you're playing Malika and Skirk, what the fuck kind of units are left for your Chaska team? No Bennett, no Citlali, no Farina. The fuck are you gonna play, man? Like, fucking Siege Win? Barbara? That's the biggest problem with Chaska. And it's a problem that that Kinich shares, and that Flynn's does not share.
For not getting an FA. So you can get yourself a Flint, but I just want to throw the big caution flag up there so that you know the potential pitfalls and shortcomings. It's like Skirk.
Potential man. Bro, the potential man meme is so funny to me. I really like it.
Without a Scoffy, but even worse because he just does less damage. Chlorand, in a pretty good spot. She's not terrible right now. She's just worse than Barisa on Overload teams, and she's worse than Flynn's on Electrocharge teams, and she's the best at Aggravate teams, but Aggravate teams kind of suck. So she has okay pull value. She's not that far from Barisa, but she's strictly outclassed by Barisa, so I don't know. I don't know. I just want to put her, I don't know, maybe it's like, according to the strict rules of my tier list, I almost want to put her here. Because, like, what value does she bring? If she's just worse than Flynn's, worse than Vrisa, why would you ever pick yourself up a Chlorand when you can just get Vrisa? But I do think she's a better DPS than something else. I don't know. It's kind of really tough. Tough little situation. Nilou is looking quite good. After being buffed by Llama. My caution is that we don't know where the future goes with Llama. Nilou is looking like the second strongest Llama team. Will Nilou work with Nefer? Will you need C1 Llama to use Nefer with Nilou? Is that even all going to work together? She's good, but also Bloom.
This is actually a very good take, by the way. It is 100% true that Nilo is going to be good in Llama teams on release. But it is unclear whether Nilo will stay in Llama's teams in the long term. Let's quickly look at Llama's C6 to understand why, right? Llama's C6, when the Frostgrove Sanctuary attacks opponents, it will deal 1 instance of AoE Dendro damage equal to 185 of Llama's EM. This is Lunar Bloom damage. That does not consume any Pale Hymn and will provide 2 stacks of Pale Hymn. This effect can occur up to 8 times. Additionally, when Llama uses a normal attack while she has a Pale Hymn stack, she will consume 1 stack to convert this to deal Dendro damage equal to 150% of her EM. This damage is considered Lunar Bloom damage. Here's the thing, okay? Will consume 1 stack of Pale Hymn. Pale Hymn is what buffs the Bloom reactions, and every time you trigger a Bloom reaction, you consume a stack. What that means is that with C6 Llama, if your application is too good, you will run out of Pale Hymn stacks and you will stop activating the Constellation 6 effect. And this effect does so much more damage than a Bloom reaction does. I feel like this is kind of an indicator that there's a very real possibility that Lunar Bloom focused characters don't want to trigger Bloom too often. And if they don't trigger Bloom too often, Nilo's not very good. Because all Nilo does is she buffs the damage you get when you trigger Bloom. Right, like in C6 Llama teams, when I was doing my calcs, I ended up getting better results doing like the like on-field dance Nilo instead of the off-field dance Nilo. Like just doing the on-field dance Nilo and then immediately swapping out, because you don't apply Hydro and therefore consume your Pale Hymn by triggering Bloom, the team dealt more damage. But like at that point, what the fuck is Nilo doing for the team? Pretty much nothing, right? And so when Nefer comes out, if her damage mechanics is somewhat similar to this, you will want to minimize the amount of blooms you're getting. And Nilo won't be very good. Anyways.
Are really unreliable, so the caution is kind of just like, let's wait and see how good she ends up being with Llama, how it compares to other teams, and like, can you realistically advocate putting Nilou when Nefer?
But Verdant Dew stacks will be necessary for Nefer. You only need to trigger Bloom once every 2.5 seconds to generate Verdant Dew at its maximum speed. You can only generate 1 stack per 2.5 seconds. So slow Hydro works.
Gonna come out and maybe not work with the Nilou version, and then now it's like, why'd you pull Nilou when Nefer is so much better? If we're talking about value, if we ever get AoE back, then Nilou is going to the moon in terms of AoE but and value, but right now not so much. I have Chaska in caution because although I do think she's like a pretty good character, you can check out my video. She does take really contested supports to be strong. So Moika, Yansan, Sitlali is her best team, but that obviously takes extremely contested characters. And then all of her other good teams use Farina, which is a very contested support wanted by Novelette, wanted by Skirk. So I just worry that getting yourself a Chaska might be kind of risky in terms of depending on if you need.
Yeah, like that's kind of why I feel like Flames doesn't belong in this category. Like, Chaska's damage in her best teams is worse. Chaska's damage in her suboptimal teams is worse. Chaska's reliance on characters is worse. Like, I don't know.
Those supports. for other characters, you might be left with not that much good stuff for your Chaska. You might say, hey, you can just put anything with Chaska. Well, you can, but if you want to do damage, you kind of need the good stuff. That's just how it goes. And yes, she has a very good weapon and a very good C1 and C2, but then we're talking quite expensive stuff. And even with just her R1, it still doesn't make her cracked enough to use really bad supports. She still needs good supports, and often they are contested supports. So next is OK for now. OK for now are characters that are currently meta, but might not be in the future depending on where things go. Novelette is becoming more and more of a driver for strong off-fielders. This is obvious by Escoffier and Inefa being his best teams, where he's like less and less the primary damage dealer of his teams. Still OK for now. He's still flexible, still strong, still clearing lots of stuff. But there you go. Yelan is still a good character, still used, still very useful in Stygian Onslaught. It's just kind of like unclear. Who knows? It feels like surely she'll get Power Corrupt soon, Columbina, but she's OK for now. It's like it's like an OK meta pull for now. And Arlecchino, she works in so many teams, especially if you're really invested. It kind of gets through a threshold where she's flexible enough that she can brute force things, kind of similar to Chaska, except I'd say she's even more flexible, and she's, yeah, it's just a little bit easier to brute force different things with Arlecchino. So she's still OK for now. I have Llama here because it's just the...
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I feel like Arlecchino is kind of what Chaska wants to be. Like, sure, she's always a pyro carry no matter what team you put her in, but like, it's rare that you will need Arlecchino's team to deal with a boss that completely fucks over every type of pyro team.
Calcs are just very unclear as to how strong she's really going to be on release. There's a huge variation depending on whose calculations you're looking at, so we'll have to test her and see. And then we have the final two tiers with a good pull, and it depends. So it depends.
Is there that huge variation in Llama calcs? Has Vomfi gotten around to looking at Ride on Hyperbloom with Llama? I don't remember. He did, yeah. Yeah, he got like 110k-ish. Right, he did that while we were calling I for War. Omega lol. Agentitis has different results than you. I think I talked to him about it. His initial calcs were like way too pessimistic for the assumptions. But I'm pretty sure everyone who's calced Hyperbloom Raiden is ending up at around 110k or more.
Is exactly what it sounds like. These might be a good pull depending on your goals, your needs, your account. And then Moika is just basically a good pull because she's so much stronger than the rest of the cast that basically no matter what else you have, she's a good pull. By the time she next reruns, I hope she's still in a good pull. That's what made me kind of want to put her in. It depends, but I think she is basically the meta. She's warped the entire meta around herself. Mav Overload, Mav Melt, Mav Vape with Xingqiu clears the turtles. She has a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of stuff you can do with Mav. She has free to play stuff, especially if you ended up getting Yansan copies. So she's the only character going in good pull. And I'm not saying she's the only good pull in the game. It's like, but I can pretty much say any account, if you pull Mav, it's going to be good for you. Like, I can basically say that. I don't think I can say that about the rest of the characters. Like Skirk, second best DPS, but she kind of needs a Escoffier, and she also really wants Farina. So, you know, that's kind of expensive. If she just worked by herself, she'd be a good pull for everyone. But, you know, she needs a Escoffier and Farina, so it depends. Are you willing to get those characters? If you are, that's a great pull. But that's kind of...
Oh, is Mulaney higher than Flynn's and Llama? I think the reasoning is that Mulaney's one-cost teams are better than Flynn's one-cost teams, right? When he talked about Flynn's being in the category he was in, he mostly insisted on his teams without Inefa being bad. Mulaney doesn't have a character she relies on like that. Durin soon. True.
be expensive if you're coming in brand new. It might be worth it. You might be planning on getting some of those characters anyways. It depends. It might be a good pull, might not. Mualani, very good pull, as she is so cheap to build such a great team. 4-star Widsith, add Shallonen, and then Sucrose plus Pyro Traveler, and you've got a top meta team, or at least a very high meta team, that is so cheap to build. So cheap to build. And it's basically like, as long as you can enjoy playing Mualani and you can get around the jank and figure it out, then she's going to be a great pull. If she was...
I have a friend going back to Genshin for Flints. How do I best help her so that her one-cost Flints team doesn't feel ass? Give up? I mean, it's not that bad. Like, at the end of the day, if you're coming back to Genshin after, like, not having played for, like, 2 years, the Flints team without Inefa is going to perform as well as the teams you had before you left. You know? It's like, it's not the end of the world. Tell her to play Sucrose Ino and then just use a healer on the Electro slot or some shit.
Easy to play, she would probably go in good pull, to be honest, and then Shallonen probably would too, because she also works with Moika. But the thing is, so many people
whoa.
in good pull playing Mualani, and you can get around the jank build. So cheap to build. And it's basically like, as long as you can enjoy playing Mualani and you can get around the jank and figure it out, then she's going to be a great pull. If she was easy to play, she would probably go in good pull, to be honest, and then Shallonen...
I mean, I don't agree with that. Easy to play Mualani sounds scary. I mean, even if Mualani was easy to play, she still doesn't have nearly as much damage as Moika does. Her being very cheap to play is a good reason to put her there. I guess. Sure. If you completely ignore the jank. But like, I guess, maybe. But I feel like so is Verissa, right? And like, T0 4-star supports Verissa versus like well-played Mualani, they're fairly similar. So but putting Verissa in the same category as Moika feels like it should not happen. So why would Mualani, without the gameplay issues, be there, you know? If you start including constellations, then sure, right? Because Mualani has like the best two, the best first two constellations in the game, probably. Right, like they're not really better than Flynn's when it comes to personal DPS, but Mualani is all the team DPS, Flynn's isn't.
Would too, because she also works with Moika. But the thing is, so many people don't like playing Mualani that it goes in it depends. And for good reason. I also am annoyed every time I play Mualani. You might be thinking Shallonen should go here, but the reality is there's a bunch of accounts and a bunch of teams that might not really need to go for Shallonen. It might be more impactful to go for other stuff. Sure.
Shallonen is... Shallonen is exclusively a quality of life character at this point. She's a privileged pull. True! Is that why they made her so white? Oh my god, that's crazy. They were ahead of the times, man. Holy. They knew. Shilonen is never getting removed from my overload teams. See, if I didn't have Verissa, I'd probably agree with you. But Verissa has all the overworlds I need, and putting Shilonen on the team removes Chevaleur's passive, and I'd rather have Chevaleur's passive so I can kill enemies along the way than Shilonen. Verissa climbing? I have Mawika on the team, and you don't need to climb that often. Ain't no way bro's running meta teams on the overworld. Okay, this is like not rage bait at all. This is 100% what I believe. Verissa overload with Mawika is by far the most comfortable overworld team in the game. It's not even close. Do you think Shilonen C2 can skyrocket Flynn's damage past Mawika level? Buddy, Shilonen C2 doesn't even skyrocket past Sucrose in Flynn's team. Oh no, actually that's not true. It does slightly. Sorry, I was wrong. It's like 4% better than Sucrose. Dude. But it stops working with C1 Flynn's. And you also start having the potential gameplay issues of relying on big bursts to do your DPS. %4 for 80 pulls? No, buddy. That's 4% for 300 pulls. That's not C0 Shilonen. That's C2 Shilonen versus Sucrose.
She works great with Mawika, but you might already have Mawika stuff that's very good that doesn't use Shilonen. You might be using other stuff. You might have a Skirk team that you don't need Shilonen. You might be planning on getting a Flynn's team or a Chaska team doesn't need Shilonen. A Verissa team doesn't need Shilonen. There's a bunch of teams that don't need Shilonen, so she could be a great pull for you. You know, a Kaniche team as another example. But there might be accounts out there that don't need to hear the brain dead advice of just pull for Shilonen because you might be building teams that don't need her. And in Nod Cry, she might be less valuable as well. Seat Lally, same sort of thing. If you're playing Melt, you should get her. If you're not, you should not get her. She's actually, you know, I recommended not pulling her for Skirk. I kind of regret saying that because she's very good with Skirk this CG and Onslaught, and if you have her, it's like very useful to have her on your team. So I kind of think that she's like better with Skirk than I said. So I made a mistake, right? So Seat Lally is sort of like quite a good pull, but again, not for everyone. And Verissa was an amazing pull. If you got her on her last banner, boy, that was a great pull because Yansan and Chevreuse was on that banner. So getting constellations of those 4 stars is so OP, and it makes up a team core that stands on its own. She doesn't take any contested supports. Sure, she wants Mav, but she can use Bennett at a 7% DPS loss. She can use Zhengling at a similar DPS loss, Pyro Traveler at a similar DPS loss. 7% is not crazy. Losing C6 Chevreuse is only a 10% DPS loss. And sure, this all starts adding up, but the reality is you might have gotten all that stuff just from her banner, and you basically got an entire top 3 meta team just from wishing on one banner, which basically never happens. Why is this? It depends then. Why isn't she just in good pull? Well, she might not be with Yansan and Chevreuse on the next banner. So I don't want to steer you wrong and say it's all about Verissa,
That's
because
reasonable.
frankly, if Clorand came with Chevreuse and Yansan every single time, she would be a lot higher of a value pull as well. So it's like her value was kind of made by that last banner. And if they rerun Chev and Yansan with her again, I'll put her in good pull again because it's just such a cheap way to get a full team. It's kind of like the Mulan thing, except that she's easier to play, where you just pull one character and you're good to go. Moika, you kind of really want either Shallonen or Sitlali, ideally Sitlali. You know, Mulan kind of really wants Shallonen. Yeah, she can get away with it, but she kind of really wants Shallonen. Skirk really wants a Scoffy 8, and ideally Farina as well. Verisa just needed the 4 stars that came with her banner. That's all. So, and to be the 3rd strongest team in the game, 2nd strongest at the time, kind of crazy, honestly. So that is my pull value ranking. Again, go for who you want to go for. Have fun, enjoy, get yourself an Ito, and enjoy your Ito. But just do so with the knowledge that this is where I really
I think there's a few sneaks, but I don't think it's that bad, chat. You guys baited me. This is not that bad. Isn't this how Jillo usually is? Just 1 to 3 sneaks? Yeah, kind of. Which here was the worst take? Probably just Flynn's in this one. Maybe Nefa too, actually. I don't know. I think this tier list was bad high bumpy. Did you? I thought it wasn't that bad. Like, I thought there were a few things that I disagreed with, but overall, I didn't think it was that bad. Why is Arlecchino so low? The biggest problem with Arlecchino is that she's never going to be your best option, right? It's like pseudo impossible to design content or that will make it so that Arlecchino is the best possible option. But she's very, very often going to be in your top 5 best possible teams for content. Digin Tulpa. But Arlecchino wasn't even the best one. It's like the perfect content for Arlecchino, and she still wasn't the best possible thing. Right, like a team focused on Maoika was better. And then on top of that, if Flynn's was out when Tulpa was here, you would have rather play Flynn's. Anyways. At C0R1 Arlecchino, is it worth going to C1, C2 for future Dire clears? I'm not sure, honestly. I don't know if she'll keep up. Anyways. I doubt Durin, a pyro character, would help these pyro characters do more damage. I mean, it's definitely not gonna happen for Mawika unless Durin just doesn't have off-field and he goes for the Bennett slot. But for Arlecchino, it could. Because Arlecchino is not really dependent on reactions. I don't think Durin will mainly be targeting Arlecchino teams, but I do think it's possible for Durin to be an upgrade to Arlecchino's teams. I'm mainly expecting Durin to be good for like Verissa, Molani, Kinich. Chaska, maybe. Yeonsun was supposed to replace Bennett, but instead became a side grade. What makes you think she was supposed to replace Bennett? She was never supposed to replace Bennett. You just set dumb expectations for yourself and then got disappointed when she didn't meet those expectations you decided to set. Yeonsun competes with Shilonen, not Bennett. Yeonsun's release was huge for Mawika, by the way. Because, especially for new players, the fact that you don't give a shit about getting Shilonen anymore on a Mawika team is so nice. Like, you can get Shilonen for quality of life if you want, but it's not even increasing your DPS. Nightsoul Generation is still better with Shilonen, sure, but that doesn't matter in Onslaught. It only matters if the enemies die from your initial burst. But the enemies don't die from your initial burst. Onslaught has too many rotations for the front-loaded Nightsoul Generation to matter. The first rotation is going to be slightly weaker, but not even by much. I think your perception is a little warped with C6 Yeonsun early on your account, because I played with both C0 and C2 Yeonsun, and the damage was slower. Yeah, but people that started playing recently started playing on a banner that had Yeonsun on the banner. So they have Yeonsun and probably C2. And more importantly, the upgrade from Shilonen, like from obtaining Shilonen if you're starting from C2 Yeonsun, is fucking nothing compared to the other 5 stars you can pull for your Mawika team. Right? And also, you can clear your content without pulling another 5-star for your Mawika team. A Mawika team that's 20% worse than premium is still more DPS than a fucking Molani team. It's still more DPS than a Flynn's team. It's still more DPS than a Chaska team, than a Kinich team. Named everyone except Verissa. Because it's not more DPS than a Verissa team. It's like around the same level as Verissa and Flynn's. If you lose 20% DPS.